Title: Blood Moon Chronicles. Chapter 1. They say the blood moon comes once every 100 years, a time when the veil between worlds grows thin and ancient evils walk among us. I'm Mike Anderson, a journalist who thought he'd seen it all until I found myself ankle-deep in something warm and sticky that definitely wasn't mud, with the distinct coppery scent of blood hanging heavy in the air. And that was just the beginning. The night started innocently enough at Murphy's Bar, my local watering hole where I go to drown my sorrows in cheap beer and even cheaper company. "Another round, Mike?" asked Maggie, the bartender who'd seen me through more close calls than I care to remember. She wiped her hands on a rag that had probably never been clean, not once since she took over this joint 5 years ago. "I'll take one if you're buying," I replied with my usual charm, sliding onto the bar stool like it was home turf, which, let's face it, it kind of was. "And while you're at it, pour one for Detective Harris, too." Harris was hunched over a booth in the corner, nursing what looked suspiciously like whiskey. He hadn't been himself lately, pale, jumpy, with eyes that darted around as if expecting something to leap out of the shadows. "Thanks," he grunted when I approached, his voice barely above a whisper. "Heard you're looking into that blood moon nonsense." I slid into the booth opposite him, just doing my job. You know how it is, people need stories to frighten their children with. His laugh came out as more of a strangled cough. "Some stories are real, Mike. Some stories, they don't end when you think they do." Before I could press further, the door to Murphy's flew open, letting in a gust of unnaturally cold air that made my teeth chatter despite the stuffy bar. "Sorry I'm late," called out Rhonda, the new nurse at the hospital. Her voice was bright and cheery, completely incongruous with the tension in the room. She took the seat next to me, her eyes wide with excitement. "I've been hearing some wild things at St. Mary's lately." "What kind of things?" I asked. "People coming in with unusual bite marks," she said, leaning in conspiratorially. "Deep puncture wounds that look almost surgical in precision. And the patients, when they wake up from their sedatives, they're agitated, aggressive. One guy nearly took my hand off before security could restrain him." Harris stiffened at this, his fingers tightening around his glass until I thought it might shatter. "Maybe we should take a closer look at those bite marks," I suggested. "If there's a story here, I'll say." Rhonda agreed. "I've been researching some old folklore about these blood moon events. Apparently, when the moon turns red like this, certain creatures are said to walk among us." Harris pushed his glass away abruptly. "You don't know what you're messing with," he muttered before standing up suddenly. "Gotta go." "Hey, where's the fire?" I called after him as he nearly knocked over a table in his haste. He didn't respond, just disappeared out the door into the night. "That was weird," Rhonda observed. "You have no idea," I replied, watching the door swing shut behind him. "Harris and I go way back. He's never been one to spook so easily." We finished our drinks in silence, lost in our own thoughts about what Harris had meant, what Rhonda had described at the hospital, and why the air outside seemed to be getting colder by the minute. "Come on," I finally said, pushing my empty glass away. "Let's go check out those bite marks for ourselves. If there's a story here, I'm not letting it slip through my fingers." Rhonda nodded, grabbing her coat as we headed into the night, a night that would turn from curious investigation to bloody nightmare in a matter of minutes. The walk to St. Mary's Hospital should have taken 15 minutes, but something felt off tonight. The streets were unnaturally empty, and every shadow seemed deeper than it should be. "You don't feel that?" Rhonda asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What?" "The air. It's vibrating." She wasn't wrong. There was an energy in the air tonight, a low hum that seemed to resonate in my bones. Above us, the moon glowed in unnatural crimson, casting long, dancing shadows everywhere we looked. We reached the hospital, but something was wrong here too. The emergency entrance doors were slightly ajar, and from within came a series of muffled thuds and what sounded like distant screaming. "Stay behind me," I said, trying to sound brave despite my racing heart. "Something's not right." As we stepped through those doors into the hospital lobby, the scene that greeted us was something straight out of a nightmare. Blood. So much blood, splattered across the walls in crimson arcs. Nurses' stations were overturned, chairs and tables scattered like toys after a tantrum. And then there were the bodies. Not just one or two, but half a dozen hospital staff lying motionless on the floor, their uniforms soaked in dark red liquid that pooled around them. "What the heck?" I whispered, my stomach churning as I took it all in. "What happened here?" Rhonda knelt beside the nearest body, a middle-aged nurse with a name tag that read Eleanor. Her throat had been torn out, not by some clean surgical cut, but by something vicious and ragged. "These aren't puncture wounds," Rhonda said, her voice shaking. Before I could respond, we heard it, a guttural snarl from down the hall, followed by the sound of something large dragging itself across the floor toward us. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and held it like a club while Rhonda snatched up a shard of broken glass. We stood back to back, our hearts pounding in unison as we waited for whatever was coming to reveal itself. The thing that emerged from the shadows wasn't human anymore. It had been once, but now it was something else entirely. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with matted fur the color of rust, it moved with a predatory grace that defied its massive size. Its face was a grotesque parody of human features. Sharp canine teeth protruded from a muzzle that ended in a snout, and yellow eyes gleamed with primal intelligence as they fixed on us. "Don't move," I whispered to Rhonda, tightening my grip on the extinguisher. The creature let out another guttural growl, saliva dripping from its jaws as it took a step closer. Its claws, thick black talons that looked capable of shredding steel, scraped against the tile floor with an unnervingly loud sound in the silent hospital. Then, without warning, it lunged. I swung the extinguisher with all my might, connecting solidly with the creature's shoulder. There was a sickening crunch of bone and flesh, but if the thing felt any pain, it didn't show it. It swatted me aside with surprising speed, sending me crashing into a supply cart that overturned in a shower of glass and metal instruments. I hit my head hard against the tile floor, vision swimming as stars danced before my eyes. Rhonda screamed, a raw, terrified sound that cut through the air and drove her glass shard toward the creature's eye. The monster roared in pain, swatting at its own face while blood, thicker and darker than human blood, poured from the wound. This was our chance. I grabbed a scalpel from where it had landed on the floor during my crash and jumped to my feet just as Rhonda made another attack with her glass shard. This time she aimed for the throat, but the creature anticipated it, sidestepping at the last second so that instead of severing its windpipe, Rhonda's makeshift weapon only grazed its neck, opening a shallow cut. The beast backhanded her across the room, and she slammed into a wall with a painful thud before crumpling to the floor. I was alone now, facing this thing that used to be Detective Harris. It turned those yellow eyes toward me, and for a moment, something flickered in their depths, some remnant of the man I'd known. "You don't have to do this," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded when my legs were shaking like leaves in a storm. "Harris, if you can hear me." The creature let out a barking laugh that sent chills down my spine. It was Harris's voice, but twisted into something monstrous. "Harris is gone," it growled, its words slurred by the muzzle filled with too many teeth. "There is only the hunt now." With that, it charged again, this time aiming directly for me rather than swiping or biting first. I knew if those claws connected with my chest, I'd be finished. At the last possible second, I rolled to the side, feeling the rush of air as the creature's massive paws passed within inches of where my head had been seconds before. As it stumbled past me off balance from its missed attack, I saw an opening and plunged the scalpel deep into the back of its neck. The effect was immediate. The creature let out a shriek that seemed to shake the very foundations of the hospital as dark blood sprayed everywhere. All over my face, my clothes, splattering across the already stained walls in fresh crimson arcs. It thrashed wildly for a few seconds before collapsing to the floor with a final shuddering breath, its massive form twitching once before going still. I stood there panting, covered in blood that wasn't mine, staring at what was left of my friend. Rhonda stumbled over to me from where she'd been lying against the wall, her face pale but determined. "Are you okay?" I asked, wiping some of the blood from my eyes with a shaking hand. "Better question," she replied, looking down at Harris's, or rather, at what was now just a body again. "What the heck was that?" I think," I said, my voice hollow as the reality of what we'd witnessed sank in. "I think we just found our story." As we stood there surrounded by carnage under the glow of the crimson moon outside the windows, something else caught my attention. a series of howls echoing through the night from somewhere in the distance. Not one or two, but many, and they were getting close. Well, that's it for today, folks. Please stay tuned for the next installment of Blood Moon Chronicles this coming Wednesday, January 21st, 7 p.m. Central Time. It's been a real pleasure. Oh, by the way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you soon, my friends.